Hello everyone, Fiat here, and welcome to part 3 of my Anno 2205 playthrough. Now before you ask yourself if I just made a mistake in saying that, no I did not. This is actually part 3. Unfortunately part 2 will never be seen because of the little fact that the entire time I was doing it, I was not aware that the microphone was off. So yeah, it is what it is. Needless to say though, I'm glad that I have this policy that refuses to allow me to upload a video to YouTube unless I've sit and watched it myself. After sitting and watching it and hearing no sound, yeah. Anyways, I digress. Welcome back regardless. So, needless to say, since an entire episode has basically been skipped, let's fill you guys in on what's been going on. Ay. I still can't believe I did that. Oh well, is what it is. Mistakes happen. So essentially what we've got is the first video we were talking about our short-term goals, our midterm goals, and our long-term goals, and in the video that no one's ever going to get to see now, I basically accomplished a few of those goals, but regardless, let's just go little by little here. Now I mentioned that one of my midterm goals was to get oil production up and running. We have the basic part of this completed, so here we have the first oil platform constructed by completing the sector project, and we're working on the second part, which is going to have to wait quite a while as the goal of it is to get 500 scientists. We're not ready for that. But what we've done here in the Arctic region is we've established this, and this is quite simply not only an outpost for our oil production, but it's also intended to be an additional supplier of neural implants for our temperate regions, and most importantly, this is going to be the main center of production now for our building materials in the Arctic. Essentially, I'm going to have this area produce all the building materials that I'm going to need, and then when I go to colonize the other regions of the Arctic, this area will then import the regions to those other regions so that I don't have to establish local production. Now, in establishing this here, as you can see, I currently have it off because I want to save money when it's not needed, and currently I'm at the maximum amount of resources for building material. Well, actually I'm not. The max now is 290, so let's cut it back on and cut the mines back on temporarily. Okay, everything's back up and it's running as normal. Now one thing though I want to point out, which would have been much better if you would have seen me building it, but that's neither here nor there, is if you're going to establish an operation like this where you have one area to be the primary producer of your building materials, that's all well and good, but one thing you need to keep in mind is if doing it in the Arctic, the buildings in the Arctic generate heat, which your citizens need in order to survive. Or, yeah. They gotta have a source of heat and they gotta have food, or they're gonna be angry and not do anything for you. And the main thing is making sure that your citizens are not dependent upon the heat from any factory or any building that's involved in the production of your building materials, or indeed any building that you're going to cut off. So here you can see right now with these red circles that indicate where I'm generating heat, so my houses are just fine. If we deactivate it, you can see that the heat's removed and only fails to heat the community center, but that doesn't require heat. All the houses here are well supplied with heat thanks to the way in which I've constructed my canned food factories. And I'm going to build more houses out here eventually, and that's why I've designed my neural implants buildings to go along and to the side, and it's also why I have this one extending for over a long distance. That way I have plenty of areas to build houses where they'll be nice and warm. But the main thing is, if you're going to have a building production resource or whatever, a building material resource production facility, make sure that it is not, no houses are dependent upon the heat from it, so that you can activate it and deactivate it at will. So we're getting to our 290. Let's just deactivate this before we leave, and we'll reactivate it when we actually feel like building something. And there we go. So that was that goal established. We've started our production of oil, and we've got a good supplier of building materials if we need it. So there's that midterm goal worked on. Additionally, our short-term goal of transferring the Vita drink production from the tundra region over to this Wildwater Bay over here has also been completed, so let's demonstrate what we've done there. Okay. Now, as you can see by looking at it, we are basically now using everything for local production. And we've cut some of these facilities off. Let's see if we can get away with cutting this one off. Yep, we're doing just fine there. And like I say, the main reasoning behind transferring the production from this area to the other one was that it would free up these farms for the resources that we needed for other things. And one such thing is, as you can see here, this requires the same resources as the Vita drink facility, but it produces the materials we need to construct the winter clothing that they need here to survive. But yeah, and we've also got our little physicist spaceport to begin researching technologies in certain areas, and it's up to 100% efficiency. Which I might add, the tundra does provide one advantage for the physicist, because these can be, a physics institute can be built in both the tundra and the Arctic region. The problem with building it in the Arctic region is simply the houses require a source of heat. Here they do not. As a result, it's much easier to build enough houses around one to get it to 100% efficiency, as you see here. Although granted there is some downsides, eventually you will need the space for other things, but as big as the tundra is, I'm not worried about running out of space at the moment. I've got plenty of it, so we'll advance as needed, and worst case scenario we can then transfer what we need or build other physics institutes in the Arctic. Because while the Arctic does have more restrictions on where you can build houses, one thing to keep in mind is there are 4 Arctic regions available to you with only 1 tundra region available. So as you'll see as being a recurring theme in the way I'm doing this, a lot of stuff that can be built in the Arctic but can also be built somewhere else, I'll tend to be building somewhere else simply because the resources that are unique to the Arctic that we'll need later on in the game, I'm going to have to produce there in massive amounts. But when that time comes, we'll get rid of everything that can be done elsewhere and put it elsewhere, but that's a ways off, so we'll worry about that when it happens. So let's take a look at Wildwater Bay. Now before we go back into it, I'm not sure if I said it in part 2 or the original one. Either way, I'll just reiterate. The whole purpose of this colony here is to be a self-sufficient producer of various goods, exporter of goods, maker of money, and yeah, a self-sufficient source of money basically. And what I mean by that is this area does not need imports from any other region, but instead exports stuff to other regions. So we have this currently exporting construction bots over to the tundra, which I don't think we need at the moment, so let's cancel that. So it's producing both the basic building materials of the temperate region. It's producing rejuvenators to then ship to the moon, meaning that this, our main area down here, can produce its own rejuvenators and not have to export them. Additionally, this area has taken over the production of luxury food. Yeah, I'll do that later. Has taken over the production of luxury foods to ship it to the Arctic, thus eliminating the need for other regions to do that. And it's all doing that while still making a profit. Again, this number here, 14,543, is the amount of income subtracted by the maintenance costs for all the buildings. So that's our pure profit, and it also, you've got the pure profit from the export of the Vita drinks. We've gotten this fully optimized, producing 500 with an excess of 15. So this is generating 31,790, and that is in addition to the 14,543. So this is being a very profitable region, and it's not dependent on any other region at all, which is good. So we have this area here, which is our basic starting area in the island. Then we fully colonize this island to produce nothing but water. And as you can see, we've got several of the facilities currently turned off. This is because we're generating an excess of water, and until we expand our populations, we don't need these. So we're good, but we've got them ready just in case. And then up here, we began to expand our Vita drink production rather extensively. We got plenty of farms to grow the fruit, and then plenty of areas to make the Vita drinks. So this operation is doing very well for itself, and it's giving me a huge amount of money. And I can't stress enough how important I feel it is to have a region like this in your game. Again, that's one that's 100% self-sufficient, that is just there to make you money without needing something from anybody else. Because when you look at the main screen and look at how much money they're making, it looks like this area down here is just making so much more money. And technically it is, but you got to take into consideration everything that's having to be imported to it, like for example the stuff from the moon, how expensive all that stuff is to produce on the moon and then ship from the moon down to Earth. And not only is it bionic enhancements, but you need the ores from Earth, we need the building materials from the Arctic, we need the neural implants from the Arctic, and all that stuff. So this looks like it's making us a lot, and it may actually be more than what we've got here, but I like having the self-sufficient region so I can know full on what it's making minus what it's costing at a glance, whereas looking at this other region with all the stuff that's being imported to it, it's very hard to determine exactly how much of that is profit, whereas I can look at this number and know that it is 100% profit. So that's great. And I highly encourage people to establish that, because when you consider there's the 31,000 from the export of Vita drinks and the 14,000 from the production, and you take into consideration that I'm only in the positive 27,000 right now, that means without this self-sufficient region to produce money, I would be in the negative for cash. So I highly recommend that in your game you either have quickly get a second temperate region and set up an area like this that's self-sufficient, or what you could do is have your very first region be self-sufficient and then get a second temperate region, and then after that point expand to the Arctic and then get the neural implants and all that. But for the moment this region is doing well, and it's exactly as I planned, and we've got good production here, so that short-term goal has been accomplished. But now let's take a look at our main region. Now, as I mentioned, the market price for the rejuvenators dropped significantly, and it was just continuing to drop and drop, and as a result I didn't bother expanding the production of it, and indeed I've actually reduced the production, or the export rather. I was currently exporting 320. However, I reduced the amount of exports and expanded my population. Essentially, rather than build additional rejuvenator production facilities to accommodate my expanding population, I just reduced the amount that I exported until the market turned around. But as you can see here, we're currently making a profit of 9,643, and it looks like the market is beginning to turn around. At least I think it's because of the market. Yeah. So it looks like the market's finally gone up, yay. So let's just confirm, and there we go. So now we're making additional money. We're going to make even more in a bit, but before I get to that, let's explain what I've done here. I've worked to try to further optimize this city to get it the way I wanted. We've got more of our tier 3 citizens, and we finally got the subway station. Now, you'll notice that all these citizens here are able to upgrade, but I'm not going to upgrade them simply because the service buildings that they require isn't going to be able to support additional population. So if I upgrade all these tier 2 houses here, this lone subway station wouldn't be enough to support all of these if they were tier 3. So we've got to keep some at tier 2. We're pushing it to the limit here, and we're actually consuming 11 points of transport in this area, and each one of these buildings only generates 10. You may say, well, how are we in the positive? Well, I built one up here that's not being used by many people, so as long as there's a road connection from one service building to another, they can gain the benefit from it, but the further they are away from the service building, the more it's going to cost, or the more points it's going to consume. So we've got it at a healthy level here, which is fine, so we're going to leave this lower part of the city as is, Everybody has what they need. There's plenty of security as well as plenty of information, so we're good. And the rejuvenator facilities are looking nice. Now there's still some area here that we haven't used, so we're slowly going to begin expanding further onward. But you'll notice these nice looking houses here. We have finally reached Tier 4 as citizens, which is the highest tier in the current game. Well, technically, the Frontiers expansion says it adds another one, but we'll have to deal with that later. I haven't played around with that much yet. Now, one of the questions may be is why am I going to establish Tier 4 citizens so quickly? Because would it not be detrimental in certain aspects? And yeah, it kind of is in a way. And that is in terms of workers. You take a look here at this investor house. They're currently generating 56 workers for me. Now let's take a look at a Tier 3 house of the same size, and they are generating 64. Again, I have the game settings set up to make it so that the amount of workers that a building generates is based strongly on their happiness. And the fact is, Tier 3 citizens with everything they want are happier than Tier 4 citizens that don't have everything they want. And you may say technically, well, Tier 4 citizens have more than Tier 3 citizens, and yeah, but they see a lot of other stuff they want, and so they're not going to be happy till they get it, whereas essentially the lower tier citizens don't know any better, so they think they have everything, and so they're going to be really happy. But I still wanted to upgrade to these Tier 4 citizens for a number of reasons, because first and foremost, money. The fact of the matter is, while higher tier citizens, especially on the difficulty level that I'm playing, that is, will always have fewer citizens initially than, or not fewer citizens, fewer workers available than they did previously, or maybe I'm not explaining that well. Let me put it to you this way. A previous tier house with everything they want will have more workers than the next tier house with nothing that they want. So for example, well yeah, that should be pretty self-explanatory or makes sense. However, a Tier 4 house, for example, with nothing that they want will still generate a lot more money for you than a Tier 3 house that has everything they want. So here you can see, this is a Tier 3 house with everything they want. They're giving me 64 workers and 896 income. A Tier 4 house is with only one thing they want, is giving me 56 workers with 1,654 income. I think you can begin to see the night and day difference, and the max income that you can receive from a single house, or a single complex rather, is 3,761 from a single house. Not to mention the base population is much higher. It's almost double what it is in the Tier 3 house. And the increase in population itself, as opposed to the increase in workers, is the main benefit, because to be honest, the increase in money may seem a lot more, and it is to a degree, but one thing you got to keep in mind is just how expensive this stuff is to produce. To put it simply, yes, it looks like they're giving me a lot of money because they have replicators, but the replicators are currently costing more to produce than it's costing me to, or they're reimbursing me for with their tax income. But that's okay, because the main thing was to increase in population. Now, why would I want to increase in population, you say? It's simple. Energy problems. Currently, as you can see here, I'm only generating a surplus of 66 energy, and that is not good. I am consuming a vast amount, and the only way to really solve this problem is to increase my population, which will allow for the really efficient solutions. A temporary solution now would be just to build a whole bunch of wind power plants, but I don't really want to be doing that, because while wind power plants are great at the beginning, this is only generating 150 power per plant. Yeah, 150 power. And to put it into perspective, let's take a look at how much energy some of the buildings are consuming. Well, this one alone is consuming 125, but that's because it has all the energy upgrades. However, once I go to expand my rejuvenator production, I'm going to eliminate all the energy upgrades and replace them with drone modules, because, well, I can't produce a lot of rejuvenators when 800 people in my workforce are producing food. That's just kind of ridiculous. That's how many workers this factory takes, so we're going to have to reduce that. which is going to majorly increase the amount of energy required. Not to mention some of the other energy costs are easily offset. I mean, this diamond mine here, for example, requires 170 energy and it's not even fully upgraded. To build an additional module is going to require an additional 85 energy. That means it would literally take two wind power plants to support this single diamond mine. And with other buildings like that, I mean, this one isn't even fully upgraded and it's already consuming 300 without the energy modules, and when we build an additional module it's going to consume 50 more. So wind power plants were fine in the beginning, but we have to find a much more efficient energy solution. And that's where increasing the population comes into play, because as you can see, I've got the sector project here, and once this dam is complete it would generate 3,000 more energy. The problem is you have to be corporation level 30 in order to be able to continue with the second, or wait, no you don't. Okay, either way we're good. But yeah, increasing the population is needed regardless, even though it wasn't corporation level 30. But point is, increasing the corporation level is what unlocks the other levels of the sector project, and you increase your corporation level by having populations. So yeah, I guess we need to work on that. But regardless, what does need a higher population is the spaceport upgrade. Now, this is the final upgrade for the spaceport that will allow you to transfer energy between sectors. In order to be able to build this, I need fusion energy cells and 25,000 investors being the tier 4 citizens, which means I need a lot more investors before I can be able to establish the energy transfer routes. Now, I currently have the ability to transfer energy from the moon, but I don't have the upgraded spaceports anywhere else to transfer the energy to, so having the ability to transfer energy from the moon is kind of pointless at this point in time. Yeah. But that's why I'm trying to expand my population, but we kind of got to catch-22. In order to really get more energy, we need a greater population, but in order to get a greater population, we need more energy. So essentially I've built a good amount for now. These citizens are happy, they have everything they need, and I'm only really producing enough replicators that I need. So, and the same with IntelliWare, the same with multi-spectrum prisms, and with food I'm producing 116 and consuming 116 as well. So I've pretty much got it as well optimized as you can get. So if I go to build more houses, I'm not going to have the resources to support them, and if I had to build the buildings then to support them, well, I'm not going to have the energy to do that. Which, again, we've kind of got the ultimate catch-22, but it shouldn't be a big deal because we'll just have to complete this sector project. Hopefully it doesn't require too much, and then once that's completed, that'll be 3,000 more energy, and then we can expand the population from there further. Additionally, that energy will be required to expand our rejuvenator production. But there's that. So far, so good. Everything's going well. Now, the major change that has been made is the change to our orbital station. It's looking a bit different than last time, and being as we are now ready to get the modules that we want, I've worked to construct this in the way that I actually want it to finally end up. So we've already got the modules and enhancements laid out to where we're going to put them when the time has come. However, what's hurting us now is we don't have enough physicists, and so we're going to have more of those institutes, and I ideally want to build them in the Arctic. But let's take a moment to explain what we've got here and how our plan is achieving. So let's take a look at the technology grid. Okay, so as you can see here, we've gotten all these technologies researched, and that's been good. And again, you unlock, or all these modules unlocked rather, and you unlock these by researching the adjacent technology for a set amount of time until it completes building. And these, of course, being the main ones we're after, these allow us to build new technology modules. Now, the way that I found to do this, to make it kind of less of a puzzle and to simplify it, is you can pretty much fully invest in 2 areas of technology. So I basically chose the 2 areas that I needed to invest in, agriculture and biochemistry, or biomedicinal, whatever, biotech. And then after choosing the two I wanted, I didn't start out, well, I started out some in agriculture, but I didn't go that far into biotech. But instead, I went all the way up the line in the area complete opposite of what I was needing, so they wouldn't be adjacent to it, because that way, by going down the energy tree all the way, I could get the modules on this side, on the left side, and then on the right side, and then I don't even have to bother going down the electronics tree or the heavy industry tree, because I can get all the other modules just by going down the ones that I would go down anyway. So that pretty much simplified it. And now we have 162 expertise, and we can begin putting points into the technologies that we're actually going to use. So first and foremost, we're going to activate this. This is the technology that's going to be very, very useful to us, as it gives you a 50% bonus to the trade prices and export prices of biotech goods. Now, we already have this for the agricultural products, which is why we're able to export the Vita drinks for such a high price. So we're going to activate this here, and this will now allow us to sell rejuvenators for a much higher price, 50% more, and since it's adjacent to this, they'll begin building this orbital shield enhancement. So let's just take a look and see how much of a bonus that technology plays. Go down here to the world market and update. As you can see, we go from making 15,261 to 24,710. Bada bing, bada boom, our plan is going into motion, and now the money's going to start rolling in. But that's not all. Let's take a look back at the technology. We have this one here. This will increase our production in all biotech installations by an additional 10%. So yes, let's do that, please. Thank you very much. And then here, this baby is going to be even more beneficial. Now, in order to get this technology, though, we have to activate this one, so shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, we need additional expertise in order to be able to unlock this technology, which sucks because this technology is going to be very useful to us, as it will allow us to generate 10 petrochemical or oil per minute, in addition to what's being generated in the Arctic. So this will simultaneously not only help our biotech industry, but give us the oil we need to expand in the Arctic. Unfortunately, I do not have enough expertise to activate it. And the main problem with that, however, is, well, I don't have enough physicists. So let's see if we can solve this problem. Now, one thing you want to do before adding a module when you know full well that you don't have enough astronauts is make sure you have all non-crucial technologies deactivated. Now, the reason for this is building an additional module while not having enough astronauts is actually going to reduce the amount of expertise you generate, and if you're not generating enough expertise, it will deactivate a technology. And if you make sure that you have all the useless technologies deactivated, then you reduce the risk of an actual good technology being deactivated. So let's just see if we can build another biotech one and still gain. Oh, would you look at that? We need oil to build an additional biotech one. What a nice catch-22. We need an additional biotech module to get more oil, but we need an oil to build an additional biotech module. Ay, ay, ay. Fortunately, however, there is another solution to this problem. It may seem like a horrible catch-22, but this isn't my first rodeo, as the saying goes, so there is a very simple solution. And that solution is to build an additional agricultural module. And now you may say, wait, you want an additional biotech research, so how would you be able to get that by having an additional agricultural module? Well, it's simple. Each modules generate a set amount of expertise. You can use that expertise anywhere, and as you can see, we have plenty of biologists, and you only need 10 for a module, and we have 11, so this will be able to be fully crewed. Not only that, the resources that we need for them, we also have available in good quantities. So building an additional agricultural module will allow us enough expertise to get the additional biochem module, or biotech module, which will then allow us to get more oil, which will, of course, allow us to construct more biotech modules in turn. It's all very complex, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty simple. So let's go to expand our facility here. Okay, now how do we want to go about doing this? Alright. Okay, so give me a biotech module.
Weitere Forschung nun möglich.
Okay, there we go. Now the amount that we've had is gone up, but let's just expand it even more. Let's build you this to increase your production. Anti-gravity laboratory, or gravity laboratory. And then, of course, we need our good old solar energy panels. There we go. Now let's see if we can increase the amount of resources we are shipping in. Hey buddy, can you give me additional food? Well, not at the moment. Crap. And I don't think you can give me additional coral. Nope. Oh well, doesn't matter. We are generating enough expertise, so give me my oil. Thank you very much. Now the downside is, now that we have a tier 4 agricultural module, we technically would be able to research these, but we don't have enough expertise, but that's fine because we need the oil. So now you can see the amount of oil that we have is starting to grow up steadily, and this is in addition to the oil well drill that we have in the Arctic. So our oil problems are now going to be solved. Yay. Now one thing I want to point out is you'll notice that I do not have this technology here. Now you would think that as a pharmaceutical company I would want all the biotech abilities. Well, this is one of the transformation technologies, as I call it, that makes a factory consume different resources, and this one makes it the pharmaceutical factories that produce rejuvenators use a completely different resource instead of algae. I'm simply not using this technology because I do not want to have to go through and redo my entire process, because activating this technology would screw me horribly. I'd have to go back, I'd have to go build a bunch of these other farms and all this other stuff, and my algae farms would now be 100% useless, and so would my incubators. It'd just be a mess. I'd have to make huge changes, so I'm just not even going to bother with it. And with these transformation technologies, to be blunt, they are very useful. They have their places, no doubt, but you want to make sure that you have these activated before you start production of them. Otherwise, it's just going to be too much of a hassle to change around. I mean, you take this technology here. This is the one that allows the luxury food factories to use rice instead of meat. Well, I knew about this technology, and before I even started producing luxury food, I had it. So right from the start, I could be producing luxury food with rice. I wasn't producing the rejuvenators with this other bio ingredient right from the start, and going back now would be just, again, too much of a hassle. But if you want to have this technology fairly early on in the game, it could be advantageous to you, because this allows you to use a farm, the resources from a farm that can be planted pretty much anywhere, to give you what you need for rejuvenators, and that of course eliminates your need to be dependent upon coastal building spots. So it has its advantages, but for the moment I've already started production with algae, and I'm going to continue doing that simply because I don't feel like changing over. Not only that, but the area where I produce rejuvenators is kind of lacking in the available land anyways. But yeah, I think you get the idea. Mainly, I guess in short, with this technology, if you want to produce rejuvenators and you've chosen a starting sector or a sector to produce rejuvenators that has a lot of available land, then yeah, this technology is very good, because then you don't have to rely on coastal building sites to produce your rejuvenators. But you've seen the area where I'm building rejuvenators. There is a ridiculous amount of coastal building sites. I'm not hurting for them, but there is a limitations on the amount of available land, so I can't exactly have huge sprawling farms everywhere. So yeah, that's just why I'm not researching this technology. But yeah, we've got that set, so Now in order to expand, we need to get more oil, which we're going to have over time, and we really need to get more physics. Yeah, physicists, whatever they're called. Yeah. Alright, but finally for this episode, I want to take a look at the moon base. Now, as you can see here, this one is a bit different. As I was researching into other technologies, I needed a lot of people from this region, or the moon region, the engineers. So in order to facilitate this, I built 2 additional training centers. Now they're at low effectiveness, but I didn't want to have to build a lot more houses. I only wanted to build what was needed because supporting the populations on the moon is expensive and they don't give you hardly any money in return. So the moon is a major hemorrhage for the most part, as I mentioned, but having one at 62% and then another at 45%, it was essentially 100%, or, well, it's not quite 100%, 62 plus 45, wait, no, yeah, it would be 100%, because 60 plus 40 alone is 100. Okay, so 107%. So, yeah, more than double this, so it really doesn't matter, and that's kind of what we needed. We needed a good amount of those mechanics. Let's see, how many astronauts do we have? Yeah, we're generating good, 117. But yeah, that's why that was needed there. Additionally, we've expanded our moon farms because these resources here are something that our orbital station needed. And wait, how much technology does this take? 75. Okay, well, either way, we can expand it, maybe. Expand the production a little bit. There we go. And let's update the trade routes. Okay, so there we go. Now, that was basically transferring 50 additional moon crops to the agricultural facility that we just built. And each one of those, in order to be at full efficiency, requires 10 coral and 50 moon crops. So, as you can see, transferring that over gave us an additional 10 expertise. So yeah, we've expanded this a little bit. We've also increased the cost majorly, but it is what it is. And in order to facilitate a greater population on Earth, we had to build additional bionic enhancements factories, and to top it off, we needed to export more rare earth elements. So yeah, we're producing 30, we're consuming 27, and exporting 3. This is because these are used on Earth to produce rejuvenators, but we're still generating extra bionic enhancements as well as oxygen so that we can sell it for a quick profit. Speaking of which, does she want to buy any? Yes. We don't need that many, so give me back to my max. Okay, there we're at our max money, so we're good. Additionally, I went ahead and said screw it and constructed a small operation to build the building materials in the game, but since we don't, or in the moon, so that I wouldn't have to keep collecting them or buying them, because yeah. Now since we're not at our maximum capacity, we'll let them keep building, but you can see here you need this one mine, and then you need this to even produce a small amount of 10 a minute. This building itself isn't that expensive, it's 600 a minute, but this is consuming 2,000 a minute, but that's only really 2,600, so I'm okay with that, really. Another thing, however, that I did do was I decided to alter the sector trait of this. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, down here you can notice that, or you may notice that each sector has its own unique traits, and I believe there's an option to demonstrate that. Oh, right, I need to renew this route. Okay, good, it's still the same amount, so confirm. How are you? Oh, you're down 1, but I can handle 1 credit less. Okay. Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, anyways, as I was saying, let's look at sector traits. Now, each sector has its own unique trait that will provide either a straight-up advantage to you, or an advantage and a disadvantage that you got to simultaneously manage. So, for example, in our main sector here, the production rate for all ocean or coastal sites is increased by 10%. So this means all our water generators, all our hydroelectric power plants, and all our algae farms are increased by 10%, which is an absolutely incredible bonus for someone that's producing a lot of algae, which again is another reason why I really don't want to use that technology that changes it around to produce materials from the farms, because I've got a bonus to the production of algae on the sea, whereas I don't have a bonus to the production of that other material on land. And when you consider that the agricultural bonuses that I have from technology apply to both algae farms and that farm, essentially going to land, I would lose, or this bonus would become completely useless. Now this one here, it is a bonus of 20% to the production rate of the facilities that purify the water for your citizens. So essentially this one's a 10% bonus to all coastal building sites, and this is a 20% bonus to coastal building sites that produce water. Considering that I want this to be as self-sufficient as possible, this means that I can get more water out of my coastal building sites, which means I need fewer of them to support the population, which will in turn mean I can use the several coastal building sites to produce energy, so that this sector never really has to worry about energy. Now with this one up here, I wasn't happy with the trait that it gave me, so I changed it. This one is now generating 30% more energy, but the downside is the amount of workers required is increased by 30%. But that's really not a big deal, because this particular region has a worker project that essentially gives you this one 200 more workers, and then having completed stage 2, I've got an additional 400 on top of that. So I've got 600 extra workers, and the beauty of it is these workers don't require any resources to maintain. Granted, they don't pay taxes either, but considering that the taxes from the moon is relatively low, it is much cheaper to have these workers than my own workers. So by having 600 free workers so far, and this one going to be generating an additional 800 on top of that, you can see why I'm not too concerned about a penalty that increases the amount of workers required. But since I want to produce a lot of energy, yeah, this is an ideal thing, because, well, more energy is good. And you know, this one has benefited here. A production rate plus 30, but the worker requirement is only increased by 30, which is really not a big deal when you think about it. I don't think yeah. Granted, the workers required for every building is increased by 30%, but again, there's a worker project in this area, so that's not a detriment. But yeah, this is one thing that you definitely want to play around with, because when you create a new game, while there is no random map generator and you'll have the same maps every time you play, you can at least change up the sector bonuses. And the way you do this is you click this little button here, Geoengineering. You essentially pay a certain amount of credits, a certain amount of iridium, and then a certain amount of the rare resource that is unique to this region, in this case, magnetic. And then if you click to change, it'll give you a random bonus. However, it increases in cost every time you do it, but I'm not going to change this because I'm very happy with the advantage that I currently have. But if you want to change it up there to get the sectors to suit your particular playstyle or your goals, you can do that, because again, this one that gives me more algae and water, this one that gives me more water, all of this fits in perfectly with this. And looking at the ones for the tundra, yeah, I can see this being an advantage as well. Essentially, it reduces the amount of all-weather clothing that your citizens require, but it also reduces the effectiveness of the power plants. But I'm not too worried about that, because, well, they're fossil or gas power plants, rather, that use oil, are very easy to produce, and once you get your oil production up in the tundra, you can use literally anywhere in the land to produce oil, so getting oil is not a problem, so I don't see this as a detriment. But my citizens consuming fewer goods, that's only a positive. But yeah, there's many others that you can play around with over time, which is great. But yeah, But all in all, things are going very well, and now it's just simply a matter of playing the waiting game.
Alle Systeme
We wait
laufen
till we get enough
reibungslos.
oil and all that to expand, and then we use that expansion to allow us to expand further in the Arctic, which will in turn allow us to get more physics institute, which will then give us more
Alle
physicists,
Systeme laufen
obviously, to
reibungslos.
get more of these modules here. So the balancing act and all that continues as we continue to strive for profits. But I'm going to end this episode on that note. Again, I think it kind of sucks that episode 2 is never going to air technically, but oh well, it is what it is. I'm not too worried. It's not like many people are going to be watching this anyways, and I'm having fun regardless. So there's that. If you do have any questions or any other things like that that I don't mention, or you want me to talk about something else, just let me know. But until then, thanks for watching, have a great day, and I will
Achtung!
see you in
Unterversorgung mit bestimmten Verbrauchsgütern
the
entdeckt.
next episode. Have a good one.